Hey everyone, Kable here, and it's time for a review of this new album from The Smile, Wall of Eyes. Now, this is the newest full length album from The Smile, aka Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, and Tom Skinner. Those first two names you might know from the legendary art rock band Radiohead. I don't know if I've made myself clear in the previous videos, but I personally love Radiohead a whole lot. And seeing as we're nearly 8 years removed from a moon shaped pool, I was very curious as to what exactly this trio was going to do back when they first announced their first album. And in some ways, I feel like being in a completely different group gives these fellas an opportunity to, explore different sounds without potentially tarnishing the legacy of Radiohead, because it sounds like they'd be neutering Radiohead's impact if they release a dud under this name. And thankfully, so far into their career, I think The Smile has done pretty great for themselves. Their previous album, 2022's A Light for Attracting Attention, was really great. I think it ended up in my top 10 favorite releases of that year, but for whatever reason, I never really had the urge to revisit it ever since my first few spins. At least until I decided to finally re listen to it recently, given I wanted to better judge this new album right here. Sonically, it seems that The Smile have gone more into a post rock sound, with most of these songs lasting 5 minutes or more, and also featuring many crescendos that you expect from the genre at this point. Now, post rock is admittedly a genre that I kind of sort of have a love hate relationship with because, on one hand, the genre has given us plenty of amazing pieces of art, but on the other hand, I feel like the genre has suffered from a great case of becoming generic. And I'm not necessarily saying that all post rock nowadays is generic. It's more like, well, I'm kind of hesitant whenever I see the genre tag thrown at a given album because I fear that it'll just be uninteresting crescendo after uninteresting crescendo and so on. But thankfully, I think the Smile pull off this post rock vibe really well on this project. Take, for example, Under a Pillow, which starts off with these guitars that kind of remind me of Discipline era King Crimson. But as the song progresses, it becomes more and more ambient, and by the last leg, it turns into this deafening drone before it just suddenly stops and then goes right into Friend of a Friend, which is perhaps the simplest song on the album with its simple combo of bass, piano, drums, and vocals throughout most of the song. Though it also features these swells of strings throughout the second half that just grow and grow until they stop by the outro. There's also the opening title track, which features this sort of tropical vibe with its spacious drums and guitars throughout much of the track. But as the song enters the refrain, you start to hear some strings, and Tom York's vocals become more ghostly, only for it to return to mostly normal by the time the next verse comes in. Personally, I think the string work does a lot to enhance the songs on this album, seeing as with each crescendo on tracks like the title track and Friend of a Friend, you can hear these swells of strings appearing in the mix, be it subtle or more in your face. And I know I'm making it sound like this album is just more crescendo core, as there are many a post rock album that use strings to heighten tension in the song, but with a lot of those other albums, I feel like the songwriting wasn't necessarily there. However, with Wall of Eyes, the songwriting is already pretty strong, with the strings being an added bonus to the overall experience. Also, there are some songs where there are no strings at all, like Teleharmonic and Read the Room, which features the subtle usage of woodwinds. I especially love Tom's vocal performance on the outro of Read the Room. I Quit is probably the weakest song on the album, in my opinion. Not that it's bad or anything like that, I actually think it's pretty great. It's just that if I had to pick a least favorite on here, it would be that, but I do generally like how atmospheric it is. Of course, I can't really mention this album without talking about its penultimate track, Bending Hectic, which is not only the longest song on clocking in at 8 minutes, but it's also easily my favorite song on the album. Not only does it have, in my opinion, the best lyrics, but it also features this extremely satisfying progression that makes for perhaps the best song The Smile has ever put to tape in the studio so far. It is definitely the most melancholic song on the album for me, but I absolutely love the second half, where before the second chorus, these deafening strings come in, only for the band to start letting out these huge guitar chords, overall adding to the chaos, only for it to suddenly stop at the end. It's quite the emotional experience, and with You Know Me, a much more subdued cut following Bending Hectic and closing out the album in general, it just leaves me wanting more from this group, which was something that I'm not sure I would have said back with their previous album. I guess another thing I should shout out about Wall of Eyes is how at least compared to the previous album, short it is. While the songs themselves may be pretty lengthy, there are only 8 songs, which results in a runtime of around 45 minutes. Now, while I do enjoy a light for attracting attention, I do feel like it was maybe a tiny bit bloated, like probably not Hail to the Thief bloated, but still maybe a tiny bit bloated. With Wall of Eyes, I feel like it goes by pretty quickly, and I think that's because it has an amazing songwriting, great moments of tension and release, great flow, and a general overall great sound. I know Nigel Godrich wasn't the producer for this album like he was on the previous Smile album and like most of Radiohead's albums, but I think Sampets Davies did a really good job with the production on here. And yeah, overall, I think if you were to ask me what my favorite Smile project is so far, I would probably lean towards Wall of Eyes. I was admittedly kind of worried that I had grown fatigued by anything Radiohead related, especially anything new to Radiohead, but I was pleasantly surprised when I listened to this. It's quite the amazing experience, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is interested. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you all enjoyed this review, and I'll see you in the next video, whenever that comes out. Bye!